Alright, we are recording, yay! Chapter 4 of Return of the Jedi. I did just finish reading it, unlike yesterday. So it's somewhat interesting. It does give us a description of Palpatine coming to power as the Emperor. It does not mention the war, which I find a little curious because the Clone War has been mentioned previously. In fact, it was mentioned in New Hope. So, yeah, but it does describe how he still manipulated things in order to get... There we go. In order to get to his position. But also does describe almost a certain level of it being inevitable, in that the Republic had, because of how large it was, had become so bureaucratic and also corrupt that, it wasn't necessarily that hard for him to do. Because you already had murmurs of people, as it then goes on to describe, giving into their dark cravings for power and such. And he basically tried to feed those, but always in a way that benefited him. But you would have... Well, no, it's actually talking about... He basically continues to use that, where, like, lieutenants undermining superiors so they move up, things like that. And that implication being that's also what he did to become emperor from just senator. Which, I mean, I do kind of like, providing that, but at the same time, it just would be nice if there were some mention of the war. I mean, we know that was obviously critical in the prequel trilogy, which was not yet written, was not yet made. I don't know how much of it may have been written, but it is still interesting, the Clone War had been mentioned previously, that Anakin was a pilot in it, was a Jedi Knight in it, so it was clearly after that war that he became Vader, or during the war, after its start that he became Vader. So the timeline would suggest then that the Emperor was at least a senator at the time of the Clone War, so they could have done some, at least a mention there. But I mean, I get it. You don't always remember all those points. Do you want to mention this because it describes Mon Mothma, who talks about how she was a senator originally, but as she started to see things crumble, the Republic weaken, become the Empire. I mean, and she says that she started forming resistance cells. And one thing I find interesting is that it does state that she made sure that they were isolated; they didn't know about each other. Part of the reason why I say that is interesting is because if you remember back when I was talking about A New Hope, it's like that's the only way this rebellion would make any sense, is that they were all individual cells, and just when necessary, you would bring them together. So like for the Battle of Yavin, that was, you brought together everyone in the area. One thing though is that they also do state every rebel, civilian and pilot, have come to join this fleet that's going to attack the Death Star. That seems like a very dumb idea. I mean, it's like, the whole idea is by having them distributed, if one is lost, there's still all the others. So by this, literally putting all your eggs in one basket, it's very dangerous. And I do get the whole, we're going to assault the battle station that is meant to destroy entire planets. In part, we're going to do that not only to stop that, but because the Emperor is there. But it's also the whole... Yeah, it does have a powerful laser on there. That's a problem. And they believe it's not functional, but still, it's like, it's a huge weapons platform, even without that thing. This is not a smart idea. I also find it curious, it does mention that the Imperial fleet is scattered across the galaxy, trying to hunt for them. You've collected your entire fleet together in one spot. You don't know that they're doing that, and there's also nothing that they're now tracking. I mean, if anything, you would be keeping many of those ships actually out there, commanded by those cells. Maybe they know, maybe they don't know what's going on, continuing to fly around to distract the Imperial Navy. So it's... I'm sorry, it's just... I know I'm getting technical there, but it is just the whole... You shouldn't group them all together like that. That is incredibly dangerous to do, especially when you are the underdog here. Trying to come back to Mon Mothma, it does talk about how she... Okay. This actually isn't in the notes. What I just talked about was all in the notes, but it does talk about how she is the elected president of the rebellion, in part because she not only was a senator and very good at it, but also because she was starting the resistance and the various resistance cells. So she is clearly invested in this. It does also say that after Alderaan was destroyed, she then went underground and continued to do things. So yeah. Unfortunately, we don't get the time skip or just time being spent because we're basically straight to the planning of this attack. We don't get that to explain how Lando now fits in, why he's now a general here. It kind of seems more like he's just being made general because it's like, well, we're putting you in charge. You don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, true. I'm comparing one piece of fiction to another. Seriously, come on, camera. Figure out. There you go. But I remember in Deep Space Nine, even though Sisko was only a captain, he did plan out some of the attacks for the Admiral. The Admiral would approve them. But still, Sisko planned out a lot of the stuff and actually directed the stuff, which some of that was, he was the main character of the series, one of them, but the most important character of the series. So, yeah, but it is also not unreasonable that you would do that. In one of the previous videos I talked about the movie Task Force. One aspect there was you had, I think they were both admirals who had planned out an attack, but a point was made about who's actually the one carrying out the plan, who's the one managing it all. It's that guy over there who's standing at a board, and they even talked about how, yeah, before I don't remember if they said he was drafted or enlisted, it's like, yeah, he was a bank teller. And right now, he is the single most important person in this entire battle because he's the one managing all of it, directing it. He did not come up with the plan, but he was given the plan, and he's the one that's going to be directing people to achieve it. And it's not like he was a captain or anything. He was just the person whose position that was. So, but anyway, Lando is a general, but it still does describe him there that he's basically doing this for selfish reasons, and I don't like that. I don't think that is doing the Lando character as much justice as it should. It's possible a reason why is because they've definitely, and are very, very clear in this, that Han has ceased being selfish, that he has truly changed as a character. So they might be doing it to have the juxtaposition between these two. But I'm not the happiest with it. Although it is also, if they do have that the Millennium Falcon is caught in the explosion of the Death Star, so Lando died, then it might be an element of morality play in that because he didn't fully join the rebellion, he's doing this for selfish reasons, he was killed as a result. Because you do see that in some stories, where it's not that he isn't a good guy, but he's not good enough. That his motives were not pure, so he's more of the anti-hero, and yeah, sometimes you do kill them. We'll see what happens. One thing kind of funny is when Lando comes over and is talking with Han and Leia's there, and like Lando's explaining that yeah, he's gonna do this, and Han is like, well, you're kind of nuts. You're gonna need all the luck you can get. You've never faced a Death Star before, have you? That whole thing. Leia just like kind of grabs his arm and in a protective manner, it describes protectively to say, we're gonna be hanging out here, and we'll be fine. He's like, she's like, I'm gonna keep him safe. I'm letting him out of my sight, any of that. But then when he gets to Madine saying, General Solo, have you selected your strike team yet? She kind of looks at him like, the whole, I thought we were gonna be staying safe, but it then immediately melts away to she's actually very proud of him, because not only is it showing that he is invested in this, is going to do what he can to help, but also that by being General Solo, that means he's actually joined the rebellion, because all through Empire Strikes Back, and technically 3 years prior, he was more like just an honorary member. He was helping, but he was in more of a mercenary type role, or advisory role, than actually a member. So she's actually completely good with this, but it is also I'm not letting you on my side anymore. Like, no, I am on this team as well, because we're not letting you get caught again. And then of course that's when Luke comes in. But one thing that's also kind of neat about the whole Han and Leia relationship there is she then refers to him, and I kind of wish it was in the movies. I understand why it's not, though, because it's kind of part of their relationship that is much, much clearer in the books than in the movie. Or at least her side of it is. She calls him your generalship, which is I am certain it is a reference to the various times he would call her princess or your worship or worshipfulness. He would do that, and undoubtedly some of that was teasing, probably also a degree of mocking, but mostly it would have been teasing. Until she said, "Stop calling me that." It's just like, okay, Leia. So her returning that is teasing right back. So I do like that. That's a nice payoff that has been going on. I think he actually would have first called her your worship or worshipfulness back in A New Hope. So it is a nice payoff for the relationship through all this. Yeah, I'll come back to that. It's not my notes, but I want to talk about it. But continuing on with the whole Han changing, it does also mention that him giving Lando the Falcon is like his actual completion of that transformation, because Falcon is so important to him. It gets a little weird almost talking about his relationship with the Falcon being like him and a woman. It gets a little weird. I mean, it's like, I get what you're going for here, but it's still a little weird. But that he does have a love for her, and he knows her inside and out. He has rebuilt her so many times. He has done various upgrades to her, and you know, his blood and sweat is in the Falcon. So to do that is a great sacrifice for him, is a great selfless act for him. And so it does call that out, because that is like completing his transformation. Normally he would never want to give it up. Of course, there is the rationale to it, though, that where it's like, I'm not sure exactly how much this makes sense. I mean, him saying that he's giving it to Lando is significant. Don't get me wrong. But it's also very reasonable, because Han has to pilot the Imperial shuttle. So the Falcon would either have to just sit there unused or be used by somebody else. It's like, Lando is leading. Lando used to own the Falcon as well, though it does point out Han made various changes, so Lando, Lando even says, I've been a better pilot with her than you've ever been. But still it's slightly different, but it's like, why wouldn't Lando take it? I mean, it's like, it makes the most sense. Since Han cannot possibly use it in this endeavor, so yeah, I mean, and that's even something in the movies that always bothered me a little bit, where it's like, I mean, what else is going to happen except to just sit there unused? I mean, it makes perfect sense. So, but it could have been done a different way that would negate or make less significant Han allowing Lando to do that. It's if he just never said anything and Lando just took it after Han had left, because it's like, well, I need a ship. That's the best one. I used to own it, so it'll work well. They could have done something like that. And in the end, I don't think Han necessarily would have been upset by that. But it is still, by having that moment, it is having him give it, but it is just the whole, there is other reasoning, there's other rationale there than just, oh, it's a selfless act. It's like, well, it's also a very practical act, very pragmatic, so. One other thing to mention is Luke's arrival, which actually, yeah, I do want to mention this, and maybe I should add this to the note. It actually describes, and because I lean back, that's going to throw off the camera, isn't it? At some point, I may consider getting a better one or better lighting. I don't know. It mentions that when Luke arrives, he's wearing black, meaning he wasn't wearing it before, which is different from the movie where he's always in the same costume. I don't remember quite how it described him when he entered Jabba's palace, but a point is made that Leia's looking at him, it's like he's dressed all in black. She hasn't seen this before. So, yeah, she also, because when they meet, again, there seems to be some suggestion, and also when they're on the shuttle, that she is trying to will things to happen, like she's using the Force. But even here, when she runs up to Luke to give him a hug, she senses that something is different, and you might be able to attribute some of this to her becoming Force sensitive, and so has a connection to him via that, and not just that. From her perspective, they are 3.5-year-long friends who have been through a very great deal together. It's not just that. Well, no, to her, it's just that we know it's more than that, and potentially the Force is starting to awaken in her and seeing that. And it does say, he is acting differently. Like, she can sense that he's acting differently, undoubtedly, because he's now aware that she is it even refers to her as secret sister. But also, potentially his awareness that she has the Force as well. So it's like, you are somebody of even greater importance than you may realize, kind of thing. So, and you do get, just like in the movie, which is asking what's wrong, and he says, "I'll tell you later," kind of thing. But what she ultimately concludes is that he seems older. Which makes some sense, because he should be more mature, although he shouldn't be that much more mature compared to when he was on Tatooine rescuing Han. I mean, it's like the him talking with. It's kind of the complaint I had in one of the prior videos, for one of the prior chapters. There was nothing about his conversation with Yoda or Kenobi that was fully revelatory to him as far as his character development. Most of it would have just been him learning why they lied to him, or at least, well, no, it's still a lie of omission. I mean, him finding out about her being his sister isn't necessarily character developing, isn't going to progress his character. But the other stuff is like, well, he should have already come to terms with the whole Vader is his father. In fact, I even talked about that when Luke asked Yoda, "Is he my father?" It's like, realistically, he should already know that. He should already have accepted that. What he's actually doing is asking the other question of, why didn't you tell me? But he doesn't want to challenge Yoda directly on that, which is completely fair. It makes perfect sense too, because you don't want to offend him, and you want to provoke the discussion. You don't want to provoke an argument, kind of thing. So that makes perfect sense. But that's my interpretation of what he's doing there versus it being clearly what he's doing there. But it still is. He should have been more mature. This would just be his questions have been answered, but his maturity shouldn't have changed. So why does he now seem older? Unless, and this is just headcanon kind of thing, just a theory, unless it's something like, because he now knows that she is his sister, he might be thinking about it more so being protective of her, which could also could radiate from him as him being older. Taking on a role of an elder to be protective of somebody younger. Could be something like that, but I don't know. It's just like I said, Luke's character development shouldn't have really progressed after Dagobah. Prior to Dagobah. At Dagobah, it should not have progressed. Return of the Jedi, his moment at Dagobah. So I don't know why they are trying to say it is, because I don't need to go through all that again. Just trying to think. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention with that chapter, and in part it was because it was hours later that I finally did the video, was Luke kind of was getting close to understanding something important. Like, they do say that, but he still wasn't completely there, which was, after Yoda died but vanished, and he's out in Dagobah, and looking at all the life there, it was like he was starting to understand the whole cycle of life aspect of the Force. But it did say that didn't really ease his pain, to recognize that, no, this is actually all part of it. So, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it makes sense for you to be sad in that circumstance, but it still is but should you be suffering from it? I think is a way to put it. Mourning, yes, but suffering from it, not necessarily, especially when you consider that as a trained Jedi at this point, he has a connection to the Force, so he still has a connection to Yoda and how Yoda is back into the Force itself. So it's, yeah. Yeah. I guess maybe because he did have something about how is this what it means to be mature, that you see, the older people that meant so much to you, your mentors die, and it's like, again, you've known him for like a week. Well, you only spent about a week with him. You only spent about a week with Kenobi. Why are you attaching so much importance to them and not to your family? I mean, it just, and not to, I mean, I don't really like how across the three stories how Luke's character progressed with what was emotionally salient to him, what was emotionally significant to him. So, I mean, it's like there is potential there that him, coming of age, and that was also how it was put in the previous chapter, with facing the reality of your mentors dying kind of thing. It's like, is that part of coming of age? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, it's great for you to be realizing that, but it's also Kenobi died 3.5 years ago. You could have had the revelation then, or leading up to this. I mean, it's just, and also, why are they so strong? Their impact so strong on you compared to, I mean, just, I think a good reason to forgive a lot of that, though, is A New Hope was probably never written for these sequels. It just got very popular, and so they had to make sequels. And so they had to now start developing putting together character development that wasn't necessarily as well seeded. So it would be very interesting to see if somebody were to rewrite these coherently, like remaking the original trilogy to make sure there is a true trilogy where you have coherence through there. But I do want to say one thing for anyone wanting to bring up the sequel trilogy: do it without schedules, without a deadline. I'm saying there is a part of me that does believe that part of the reason those movies were so bad is because they tried to release them, what was it, every other year, where they would have one year the main movies that were the numbered ones, and then the other year non-main movies. So that's how you got like a Rogue One and then Solo, where those were the Star Wars stories. It's like, yeah, that's still 2 years. It takes about 2 years to make a movie, so it's like at the end of one, you were already having to like start production on the next. So, well, pre-production you'd be starting. Production itself can, in some cases, be just like a month, depending. But anyway, it still is it would be interesting to see these books rewritten, but to be more coherent and intended as a trilogy. Not really sure what more to say in that, but of course, I should repeat the whole, as I've said many times before, I'm not a fan of fan fiction. I mean, it's fine if you want to write that for yourself, but if you got a good story idea, write it in your own universe. Don't tie yourself to somebody else's. Don't make yourself reliant there, unless you get permission. If you get permission and you think you got a good story there, go for it. But yeah, it just, little awkward that. And seriously, I mean, tell your own stories. They'll potentially be way more awesome because you're not restricted by what somebody else gave. You get to use your own restriction. And yes, I do have some ideas that could be stories that would be similar in some concepts to this, but at the same time, I'm not restricted to the concepts of Star Wars because they would be my stories, my own worlds, my own characters, all that. Alright, so that's it. I guess I do want to point out, yes, very near the end, there's only the 9 chapters in Return of the Jedi. Yep. Oh, and then we get in about the authors, which might actually be a little interesting to look at because is okay. James Caan, who's the author for, pretty sure he's the one who did Return of the Jedi, just looking at this, is a recovering emergency room doctor who has published a science fiction trilogy of his own, as well as a couple of murder mysteries and a handful of novelizations. Now, I'm not sure when this was written, so how much of his writing had been done, but that's actually, wow. That's impressive. Emergency room doctors are no joke. I mean, the stuff you have to put up with there to keep people alive, I mean, it's, yeah. I can understand why being recovering, because it's intense. So, yeah. But also, I will add one other thing to that, though. As intense as it is, he was writing. There's no reason you can't write. It's not like you need to write fast. You can take your time. If you need to take your time because you got work, take your time. If you need to take your time for other reasons, take your time and write. There's no reason not to. And you don't need to have a writing background, a firm writing background, if you got a good story idea. Just sit, write notes, write out ideas, write the story. So, anyway, see you next time.